that especially early on when the practices first opened up again, it was a really hard time to get PPE, especially the masks were really difficult to get, and the face shields. In fact, in Washington, they required some type of glass or some protection up front, the front desk, and they were out at a lot of the stores to be able to get that. So, but that seems to be improving these days. This chart says how many days each office has in stock. So about 8% of the practices have their N95 or KN95 masks. For 0 days, they don't have any stock. And then there's 18% are 1 to 7 days, and 30% are about 8 to 14 days. So again, this is improving. We're seeing Henry Schein, Patterson, and even some other companies are coming out and having more of the PPE available for practices. So it's improving. Next slide, Kevin. Excuse me. This slide is on how full are the practices getting. A lot of the practices we're talking to are saying that their schedule's getting full. There's a percentage, 76 to 99% full. Comes to about 31% of the practices are 76 to 99%. There's about 51 to 75%, about another 31%. So overall, there's about 70% of all practices have their schedule half full or more. So you can tell that patients are coming back to the practices, and things are picking up. So and then 12% and 25% full. Okay, next slide. Staffing has been another challenge to a lot of the practices. Some of the staff either enjoy the $600 a week CARES Act spiff that was out there, especially maybe some of the lower paid assistants. They are getting $600 a week on top of their unemployment. The practice or the doctor offered their job back, and they're like, well, you know, I'm making as much, if not more, being on unemployment, so I think I'm going to continue my vacation while this summer, the summer sun comes out, and I'm going to relax a bit before I come back. Little do they know that that ends at the end of July, so they'll be unemployed and not making their additional $600. So I've heard stories of hygienists not coming back because they were they're married and they have kids, and found out that during this COVID shutdown time that they can actually swing it financially by just having one employed, and then the spouse stays home and takes care of the kids. So that's allowed, they're positive about COVID, is that allowed them to kind of test the market and see how things go with just the one person employed. And it went really well for someone. And, you know, and so if you think there were problems before COVID getting staff, that's kind of continued on. It's actually gotten a little bit worse. So, but we'll see what happens over the next coming weeks. Okay, next slide. Practice values has been kind of an interesting topic. I've listened to some podcasts, quite a few podcasts and webinars and those types of things from different consultants and industry quote unquote experts who, you know, the sky is falling, 20% of practices are going to fail and go under. You know, there's a lot of practices where their production is going to go down. And the first bullet point there, the COVID discount. Some CPA guys and consultants are asking for what we call a COVID discount because practices were closed for a couple months, and therefore the patients are gone. And you know, we're taking the stand that patients are coming back, which statistics are showing that, and that the volume's coming back as well. So we're not at this point counting for any COVID discounts for buyers. We're just saying that practices are continuing to get their patients back, and things are going well. So there's really no need to do a COVID discount this time. And then the COVID transactions. We've had several transactions that were about ready to close when COVID happened, so we had to put those on hold. Those have now ended up closing and getting sold, and we sold those at the pre-COVID values. So the banks were able to get the loans through, and the buyers were able to buy the practices at the pre-COVID levels. And good practices and good locations, in the metro areas like Portland, Seattle, Denver, those highly desirable locations. If it's a good practice, good location, it's going to be priced at a premium. So it's going to be a good pre-COVID values where they were before. So the challenging ones might be the smaller practices that are a little more difficult to sell. And as we stated earlier, and you saw from some of the statistics, patients and production, they're coming back. I just got off the phone with a doctor just a little bit ago, and his month of June, he's projecting to actually be higher than his January month. So granted, that may be a blip with all the big rush to get back into the office, but at least he's seeing a lot of patients, and patients are not having a problem coming back into the office. With all the things that they're doing to protect the patients. And the way that we're valuing practices currently is we're looking at them through the end of 2019. So not taking into account the COVID months, so the months of March and April and part of May. We're just assuming that there was only 2 good months in 2020, so we're not going to count those at this point in time. We're going to do our evaluations through the end of 2019 and count those as normal months. And as time goes on and we get further into 2020 and we get some more normal months under our belt, as long as COVID part 2 doesn't come back, or whatever the terminology may be, then we'll start including some of the 2020 numbers. And we'll average out those COVID months where the practices were shut down. So if a practice was averaging $100,000 a month for all of last year and into January, February of this year, we'll use $100,000 for the March and April months and May as the average months, and get a 12-month trend that way. So that's kind of how that's our plan on how we're gonna do it. Okay, next slide. Practice sales are continuing. As we said, we've had a number of sales happen already this year, or since practices returned. So they're still trending forward. We have a number of associates who actually were let go as part of coming back into practice, and they're now turning into buyers, and they don't want this to ever happen again. They want to take control of their destiny. So those associates were in practices where the employing doctor decided that there wasn't enough production anymore with COVID in the practice, so they decided to let their associates go. So associates are now trying to find a job, but they're also looking for practices to purchase so that they never get into that situation again. Sellers are being influenced by COVID and PPE requirements. We have a number of sellers who were thinking about waiting for another 2 or 3 years before they decide to sell their practice. They're now calling us and telling us that they really don't want to deal with this ever again. So they want to be done and sell their practice and just move on into retirement. So that's affecting the market. So we're getting a lot of those. There has been a DSO slowdown in some of the group practices. They're kind of taking a little bit of a wait and see attitude. They want to see how the market's going. A lot of the DSOs are backed by private equity, so they're not taking the plunge into running out and buying a bunch more practices. Several that I've talked to that were looking at some practices pre-COVID are now saying that they're going to wait probably until the fall at the earliest before they start looking at practices again. I think some of the big boys like Heartland may come out and start buying practices, but some of the other guys, probably not quite as financially backed as those guys, are going to wait for a while. It is still a seller's market. There's still more buyers than sellers. as soon as the shutdown stopped and practices started opening up again, we started getting a lot of calls from buyers looking at practices. I think in the last 2 weeks, we've put 3 practices under contract. So the market is still moving. There's still more buyers than sellers. There are still group practices out there, but they're kind of waiting in the wings right now. But we are getting really active. We talked a little bit about some doctors wanting to sell quick. There's also some doctors who wanted to delay the sale. They think that values won't be there, or they think it might take a while to sell, or they don't know what's going to happen with COVID, and they really don't want to hand over a practice to a young buyer, and then 3 weeks later have it closed down with COVID again. So they just kind of don't know what's going to happen. So they're kind of taking a wait and see attitude. Several have said that they're looking into next year now, into middle of June, probably June of 2021, before they start to look at selling their practice. Message to them is like, okay, well, that's great, but don't take your foot off the gas. Keep going, build your practice back up again, look at your expenses and get those under control. Contact a good consultant to help you out, like Mike Dinzio, and just have them go through everything and help you get your practice ramped up and ready for sale when it's time. Okay, next slide. Practice financing has been a little bit interesting. When the shutdown happened, pretty much almost all the banks decided that they weren't going to lend during that time. I think there was a couple transactions probably happened, but they were pretty rare. Most of the banks are taking an approach of let's kind of wait and see what happens. Some of the larger practice finance banks and even the local banks are taking that approach. They're a little leery of jumping right back into things right away and starting lending like crazy. So they're just kind of holding off. There are a couple larger banks that are lending. In fact, some are going like crazy, and they're busier than they've ever been, because there's not many lenders right now. I expect that to probably change over the next couple months, next probably 2 or 3 months, as practices get back to normal and practices are open. There are some changes in the buyer liquidity requirements. They like to have a buyer to have about 10% liquidity in their savings account or in some type of equity that they can quickly get their hands on. And as always, profitability and cash flow are the 2 most important things in a practice. So if you're in practice, you're thinking about selling now or in the future, you need to pay attention to how profitable your practice is and the cash flow in the practice. And we're always happy to help you figure out what that is and what it should be. We have some ratios, and I know Mike does too, analysis that you can look at, and how much is your staff payroll as a percentage of total collections, and your lab fees and supplies and all those things. So we know where those should be, and can look at your cash flow and profitability numbers. You know, the challenge we have as a broker is a lot of times we'll get practices and the overhead is just astronomical, and those are really hard to sell. So the bottom line is patients are back, and they do still have their teeth. They didn't lose their teeth while they're out of break. Collections are coming back, numbers are coming back, things looking positive. Practice values and sales are returning, and they're still happening. We're getting a lot of calls from buyers and sellers. Keep your foot on the gas, keep going, keep moving forward. You know, we've all survived, and life goes on. So that's kind of the message at this point in time, is to keep going. So, and that's my contact information. If you ever have any questions about practice values, associates, sales, anything, we're more than happy to help you. Even if you need a contact referral for somebody else, we're pretty well ingrained in the states that we're in. So, all right.
Thank you so much, Rod. We appreciate it. And I do need to see a dentist. That's great. All right. We'll we'll move on, so we'll stay on time. I'd like to introduce Mike Schoen. Mike is the founder and CEO of Affordable Image Dental Marketing. Mike and his company have been through the best and the worst economies in our lifetime during its 25 years of marketing for small businesses and dental practices. Mike and Affordable Image have worked with hundreds of startup dental practices and existing dental practices to help them grow their revenue in all types of economies. I've worked with Mike in my previous position, and I've worked with Ingrid. Great company. Mike, welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule tonight to join us.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin and Rod, for having us on the webinar here with you guys. We love talking marketing. I usually get to have Ingrid Snow here with me. She's our Vice President of Practice Marketing, and she's been doing this for about 30 years, and she knows dental inside and out. She worked in a dental practice, and she's been in marketing for a long time, and she's been with us for about 10 years or so, and she's actually taking care of some family stuff tonight, so I get to be here talking to you all and really sharing the world of marketing and how it works in a dental practice, and specifically how it's working now in the crazy world we live in. And it's certainly an unprecedented time that we live in, for sure. There's no books, there's nothing you can Google, there's no anything anywhere to tell us how to handle or what to do with what's going on. And so the biggest question that we get, that Ingrid gets and we get as a company, is, should I market my practice? Should I market my practice during this time of social distancing? And the answer is absolutely, positively yes. As a dentist, you are a leader in your community. You're a leader to your patients. You're a leader to your team, of course. But the biggest thing to know about marketing is it's a message, and that message changes for various times and various situations. So Kevin had mentioned that we've been around for a little while here, working on 25 years, and we have truly seen the best and worst economies in all of our lifetimes. And the message changed. Times change, but the message changes along with it. But the marketing cannot stop. It's important to continue getting your message out there, to let people know that you're there and what you can do and how you can help them. And so it's very important to let your patients and your community know all the things that you're doing to keep them safe. I think that's the big word of the day, of the era right now, is everybody wants to feel safe wherever they go. And it's very important to let your patients, your returning patients, your existing patients, and your community know what you're doing to keep them safe, and really letting them know that this is something that that's not new to you as a dentist and as a dental practice. If anything, the most prepared people for the entire situation that's going on in our world are the dentists. And so it's important that you let your community know that. And that's marketing, believe it or not, that is marketing. Talking about that, letting your community know, that's all marketing. Next slide, Kevin. Another question we get is, what can we do during this time of social distance? What are the things that we can do or shouldn't do? One of the big things we tell all of our clients and anybody that'll listen, any dentist that'll listen, is you have to keep your SEO going. Do not stop your SEO. If anything, spend more money on it, because other doctors and other dentists are stopping spending money on SEO. So now's a great time to be able to move up the rankings for your practice. SEO is something, it doesn't even if you stop today, it could take months before you start falling down the rankings. However, you start falling, it's going to take you months, if not longer, to get back up and get going and get rolling again. So you want to be there, because as Rod was talking about earlier, is we're seeing already in a very short time that patients are coming back and they're calling the offices and they want to see their dentist. They miss their dentist. So we're already seeing that. Well, that's also happening with patients and potential new patients that don't have a dental home. So you want to be found easily, and obviously one of the best places to be found is on Google. So keep your SEO going. The other big thing you want to do during social distancing is social media. Social media is in the very name is social, is a great place to be sharing information about you and your community. It's also a great place to be sharing information on their oral health and how how the oral health affects the entire body, and then also what they need to be doing, during the stay-at-home situation. Don't forget to take care of your teeth and brush your teeth, and those kind of things are great messages to get out there. And then people that have conditions of like diabetes or are pregnant and those kind of things, they also want to know what they should be doing with their oral health. So a great place to get that information out is on your social media channels. And then the other big thing one of the biggest things that you can do, if not the biggest thing during this time, is video marketing. There's a statistic here on the slide here. It says 71% of people watch more video than they did a year ago, and 82% of internet traffic will be video searches by 2021. And this particular statistic was pre-COVID. So if you can imagine right now how many people are on their phones and on their computers and doing searches, and will take the extra time to watch videos and things like that. So now is the time for you to be doing video marketing. Video marketing, the one big thing about video marketing is if you don't start doing it now and you wait, at some point you're literally going to be invisible to Google and to even your potential patients, because as the statistics are showing and how fast we're converting to become a video world, if you're not doing it, and if you don't have a bunch of videos already lined up, you literally are going to be invisible. So I feel like I'm preaching and trying to preach and let people know, and let our dentists know how important it is to do video. So next slide, Kevin. Why should you market during social distancing? Number one, stay connected. In the term social distancing, that makes us feel like we're supposed to be apart and stay apart, but it doesn't mean that we're going to stay apart. It means that we stay apart physically, but not as individuals, not as human beings. So it's very important that we stay connected with each other. And it's very important that you stay connected to your patients. And video is the best way to connect with your patients and your potential patients, your community, while you're staying apart. Video, right here, we're on a video. We can't be with you guys in person, but at least you can see and hear our facial expressions, and hear our voice and fluctuations, and see the passion that we have and the care that we have for what we do for dentistry, and the same thing for you, for your patients. There's no other way to show that. You can't put it in writing. The only way to ultimately show how much you care and how your team cares is video. Human beings have a strong need to connect to one another, and so we're missing that. We've been missing that for 3+ months now, and who knows how much longer it's going to be. And even when they're in your office, it's different than it used to be. We have practices that they call themselves the hugging practice or the high five practice, and they're suffering because that's how they built their culture, is to hug and to high five and to love their patients, and they can't do it in that same way. And so what we're telling our offices that have done that, and the ones that haven't done that, is use video to hug. Give a video hug. Use video to communicate and to tell your patients how much you care and how much you love them and how much you appreciate them. The only thing you could possibly do besides being with someone in person is to have a video to explain these things and to show these things. So next slide. And then the last question, but not least, is how do I market during social distancing? And you've heard me talk about video for the last 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm not going to stop talking about video, because video, the beautiful thing about video is it can cover so many things. It can help. It helps your SEO, as I mentioned earlier, as Google's looking more and more for video now, and at some point they're going to make video the top #1 ranked piece of content that they're going to look for. So we're telling our doctors, do it now, make it part of your culture. The doctor doesn't have to do all the videos, the team can do them, but we want you to do video, obviously. The beautiful thing about video in today's world is you don't need a full production company. I still believe there's a place for highly produced videos, and I think that there's offices that it really makes sense to have a produced video. But even with a produced video, we strongly want to see our doctors and our client doctors using video in the real world. So I like to talk about YouTube and how YouTube has the word "you" in it, Y-O-U, and reality TV. Why does our culture love YouTube so much and reality TV? You know, YouTube is the #2 search engine and right now behind Google. So there's a lot of searches, actually, people looking for information on YouTube. Well, they're looking for the reality, the real part. So we want our doctors to not have a perfect, to not have perfect wording throughout the whole thing, and maybe not be perfectly, especially at this time right now, is maybe you don't have your beard trimmed up just right and you didn't just shave your head for the video, or maybe you have a shirt you don't normally wear. That's okay. That also shows that you're real and who you are, and helps you connect with your patients. So we really obviously we want to see our clients do video. We're here to help and here to talk to you about it. Those are the biggest things. I'm gonna leave you with what I kind of started with here, is that you are a leader, and you're a leader to your team, you're a leader to your patients, and you're a leader to your community, and they're all looking to you to show leadership and to be there to help. And this group here, right here, Kevin, Rod, Michael, myself, Ingrid, I guarantee everybody at Omni and everybody that works for Next Level, we're all here to help you. Dentistry's been so good to all of us. We're here to help you in any way that we can. We're available any time to talk to you. The one little more thing I want to point out on my little slide here is that the last one there is the average attention span. And this was I think it was two years ago. A goldfish attention span is 9 seconds, and a human being's attention span is 8.2 seconds. So us human beings, we don't have the same attention span as a goldfish. It's pretty sad. And that's why we love video. We also love shorter videos. I have in here, the shorter the video, the better. 30 to 90 seconds is a great place to be in video. If you want to do a longer video, that's fine. We like to see you do multiple videos. So if you have something long you want to talk about, we like to see you do part one, part 2, part 3 kind of a thing. So anyways, we're here to help. We appreciate all that the dentistry does and that you guys do, and we understand the pressures and the stresses that you're dealing with, and bottom line, we're all here to help. Thank you.
And thank you, Mike. And again, Mike has one of his staff members, the Ingrid Snow, that is excellent at basically dealing with a lot of the same things Mike just talked about. So reach out to both of them to have them help you with your marketing needs. Thank you, Mike, for taking time tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Denzio. He is the founder of Next Level Consulting. Michael is an experienced and highly respected dental practice consultant who has helped over 500 doctors start, buy, and grow their practice for almost a decade. With Next Level Consultants, He hopes to expand his efforts so he can motivate and enable even more doctors to thrive and meet their goals. Good evening and welcome, and thanks for taking time, Michael, with us tonight.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin, Rod, Mike. Appreciate all of you guys participating tonight and letting me be a part of this. I love doing these things because, you know, the dental industry has been so good to me. I know it's been great to Rod, Kevin, and Mike too. And this is our small way of giving back, and it's super cool to be part of things like this. So thanks again. You know, tonight I really just wanted to focus on a few things. You know, as we go into this post-COVID era, I think about a lot of things. I think, you know, man, we just survived something, and how hard it was, and you know, we sat around for, you know, months really thinking about how we might be able to improve our practice, or sat on 100 webinars like this one, and I'm just webinar exhausted, as I think probably everybody else is too. So thanks everybody for being on this one. You know, before you implement really anything in your practice, you know, every practice is different. Every practice is going to have a different nuance, a different twist, and different teams, different environments, different demographics. And so before implementing any change or anything I say or any of the panelists say, you know, think about your priorities. I always like to ask my clients, you know, before you make a major decision and change anything in your business, think about, you know, these things in this particular order. You know, patient first, practice, team, and self. You'll get in a lot of trouble if you invert it. And I tend to get a lot of my clients come to me with, you know, issues or things that they're stewing on, or things they want to work through. And it all started with their self. And I try to remind them that it's really about the patient first, practice second. And then that team one's got an asterisk to it, because gosh, in a world today where dental assistants and hygienists aren't coming back to work, and you can't even get a dental assistant to show up for an interview on time these days, and they're asking for all kinds of wages that they normally haven't gotten. And so sometimes that team goes right to the top, and I can understand why. It's a challenging time in that way. But, you know, before making any of those major changes, just get your priorities in place and work through that process. Next slide, Kevin. You know, the other thing I wanted to say is, you know, you've heard this before, crisis equals opportunity. You know, a lot of public speakers use this. A lot of consultants talk about it. I don't know if you knew where it came from, but where it comes from is this Chinese symbol that you see in front of you. This Chinese symbol means crisis. But really, if you're Chinese and could speak Mandarin, that symbol means danger and opportunity. It's an interesting thing, because wherever there is danger, there is opportunity, or when there's a crisis, there is opportunity. I can tell you that a lot of my clients came out of COVID better out of this, with the loans and the scheduling and the staff issues. It's just really interesting. You know, the government really came together and put some of these loans together for everybody. It actually gave some people some lifts that they didn't have. And so, you know, I'm trying to use this COVID environment as an opportunity in my business, and I would just challenge everybody else on this call as well. So next slide, Kevin. So the things that I wanted to focus on tonight are, you know, things that really will drive revenue and or save costs, because I think all of those things are on our minds with revenue and expenses. Revenue, because, you know, we're trying to get our patients back on the schedule, and you know, our revenues might be dipped a little bit, like Rod kind of outlined in his presentation. And so, you know, as someone told me more recently, and it's so true, just because your revenues may be down doesn't mean your profits have to be down, as long as you're managing your expenses appropriately. In fact, one of my clients today, I'm thinking about him, he onboarded Next Level a month before COVID, and he was behind on his mortgage payment 2 months. And we got out of COVID, he got some loans, And the first 4 weeks right into post-COVID, he's actually made a paycheck because we put these financial monitors in place. And so I would challenge everybody on the call, you know, if you weren't tracking your expenses, do it today so that when you do ramp up, you know what you're spending and where the money's going, and just get into the habit of that. You know, now's a great time to potentially renegotiate contracts and services, third-party contracts. You know, there's so many specials out there with this COVID situation. Again, opportunity, crisis, you know, get on board, get onto some of those promotions and really track those expenses. Next slide, Kevin. The next slide is something that you probably should take a picture with your phone. I know a lot of people talk about these percentages, but again, it's what you do with them. But if you're going to track them to these. This is where you want to really focus on some of these industry average percentages. So this pie chart represents 100% of your expenses in a dental office, not including owner's compensation. So although wages is targeted at 30% of the overall practice's revenues, it actually makes up, as you can see, about half of the total expenses. So it's really something that you want to focus on. You know, furloughing all of our team members and then bringing them back, as painful as that was, the comeback is really important. Again, just because your revenues may be lower doesn't mean your profitability has to be. And so you could potentially, you know, move into this post-COVID environment, managing some of these expenses a little bit tighter and just being a little bit more aware. Maybe having that dental assistant not come in the full you know, full time. Maybe just, you know, just really monitoring and keeping your eyes on all that stuff. So just take a picture of that. Oh, and while it's on top of my mind, I'm offering a profit tracker tool. If you all want that, just shoot me an email, let me know. But it's a way you can monitor your expenses every month over month, and it'll actually show you how you're doing compared to these percentages. One other asterisk to that is these are Northwest regional expenses. So I actually saw one of my clients in Colorado, one of them in Colorado, in the participants, their numbers would be a little bit different. So anybody in the Northwest, that regional area, you want to target these expenses. So next slide, Kevin. The next thing that I probably will spend most of the time in this presentation is this case acceptance. I mean, this slide, I really could just talk about this the whole time. I'm thinking about that coveted chair time right now. Chair time is so important right now because, you know, we've been on the sidelines for so long. When we do have those patients coming in, you know, all hands on deck, and we really want to capitalize on that opportunity. I think about Mike, you and Affordable Image, and you put together these elaborate marketing plans, and you know, the dentists are spending money, spending time, putting a lot of energy in getting these patients in this funnel. And you know, we're always, you know, quick to blame the marketing company about, oh, we're not closing business and there's no ROI. Well, take a look at this funnel. Like, once that patient calls, a lot of is it 100% on you and your team to capitalize. I was in sales for a long time before I got to the place that I'm in, and there's always this sales funnel, right? Like, you get a ton of leads and every step, and then you get it down to the nitty gritty. The goal would be to potentially open the bottom up a little bit so that you're actually scoring more revenue and more clients. And so anyways, I guess what I'm saying is you're going to spend so much time into getting the patients to call. How are you picking up the phone? You know, are you getting these folks to schedule? If they are scheduling, how many of those are breaking the schedule? Are you confirming them? And then one of the statistics that I love tracking is the step from 3 to 4. Of the patients that are in your chair that got evaluated, what are you diagnosing? I got a lot of dental assistants and hygienists pulling me to the side saying, I really wish my doctor would not say, let's watch that. I really wish they would press that a little bit more because that patient needs it. And so I have some question marks on the left-hand side because, you know, a lot of doctors hear, oh, I'm 100%, I'm 80% case acceptance. Great. But that's step 4 to 7, right? Patient treatment presented, you know, scheduled, and then treatment completed. And there's a lot of things to talk about with step 4 to 7, like handoffs and financial arrangements and using images. You know, images are your best friend. But what about step 1 through 4? You know, I really want to challenge everybody on this call to really pull up this exact slide to your team and go through each step with your team and actually have a conversation about it. Because if your culture and your team can really harness this and own this whole process, you will see massive growth in your practice. Next slide, please, Kevin. A little bit more on case acceptance, though. Some of the things that I love to track is dollars presented versus dollars accepted. Your goal will be 45% there. And again, the key word here is dollars, because a lot of doctors are like, oh, I'm way better than 40%. But what they're thinking is the last bullet, which is cases presented over patients scheduled. So if you presented, I don't know, a crown and 3 fillings, that patient may have scheduled the 3 fillings, but not the crown. And you're thinking, oh, 65%, I'm doing a good job. But if you actually tracked dollars presented and dollars accepted, you'd probably find some more opportunity. Big picture here, though, what gets tracked gets done. And so as you go through that funnel and you look at each one of those metrics, track it and see if you can improve the next month, the next week. But again, what gets tracked gets done. Two more points about case acceptance, and that is, you know, imaging really is your best friend. Like Mike was just saying, videos, they're so key. And the goldfish, I loved that goldfish because it's so true. Instagram is hot right now because you just look at a picture and that's entertaining. You know, you don't even want to go on Facebook anymore because people are writing novels and no one wants to read novels, you know? And so I guess what I'm saying to that matters with case acceptance too. You know, patients know what they know, which is really nothing, but seeing is believing, right? And less talking, more showing, do the Instagram in your office, in the chair, show them what they need, and really it'll sell itself. I can't stress that enough. Next slide, Kevin. The last thing about case acceptance is, you know, as you go through the sales funnel, as you use imaging, as you get better at verbal skills and communicating and handoffs, you get your hygienist to pre-diagnose. All of these things matter in case acceptance. However, getting your team's culture around finding out what's most important to the patient is key to all of it. And how I kind of define what's most important to patients is I've kind of broken it down into 5 things. If you can identify which one of these 5 things is most important to every single patient that walks into your office, you will sell more dentistry. And by the way, sales is not a dirty word. I know some dentists like me to interchange sales with enrollment. So if you want me to say enrollment the rest of the night, that's fine. But let's be honest, it's sales. But at the end of the day, like take me for example, convenience is probably my most valued and what's most important to me. You know, I'm constantly driving, I'm flying all over, meeting my clients. I've got a family of 4, 2 kids under 4 years old that are driving me crazy right now, by the way. But the point that I'm making here is that, like, if I was in your chair and I needed an SRP and you told me, hey, Mike, stick around, we can work you in later today, I'm gonna sign up because convenience, it's all about convenience for me, right? If you could identify with every single patient what's important, and then when you find that treatment that particular patient needs, and you make that point to them that important on that case that you present, you will get better results. You know, the fourth point there, I'm looking right at it, money, insurance. I can tell you right now, all my offices, it's like an act of God to get them to think that insurance is not what the patients actually are making decisions on. And what I mean by that, they're so insurance focused. Oh, the insurance only covers this, so we're only going to diagnose this, and that's what's best for the patient. And they just assume this, but it's not the case. You know, it's what, you know, the best example of that is cars. You know, people buy based on feelings, emotions, relationships. And if you can show them the value, they will buy dentistry, whether or not their insurance is covering it or not, if you can show them a good reason for that. So it's really getting this culture around the team, and to really think about that entire funnel that I showed you earlier and link it back to what's most important to the patient. Again, you will see some massive change in your office. Next slide, please. Anybody that ever hears me talk, I'm big on financial arrangements because, and I talked a lot about this on the last webinar, you know, financial arrangements to me, maybe it's because I was an ex-banker or recovering banker. I like to say, you know, I'm so sensitive to money in general and how people think about money, but here's a couple quotes that I'll share with you. Americans who have savings accounts, just in general savings accounts, the median balance is $4,500 per the Federal Reserve. Mind-blowing. The next one's even more mind-blowing. The older Gen Xers, 45 to 54, 58% of that group has less than $1,000 in their savings account. And of the remainder, that includes of that 58%, 40% of that group has $0. So big picture here, people don't have cash. And so I think that's why everybody goes to the insurance and goes to the money on the last slide. However, I will tell you that if you can offer your patients more options, more ways to pay for dentistry, they will choose that option if you've done a good job of explaining what's most important to those patients and why they need the dentistry. Next slide, Kevin. So I guess big picture is I want every office to look at their financial arrangements and identify if you have a weakness or not. So there's three really options that I think every office needs. Of course, a credit option, and most of you know Care Credit, Lending Point, Green Sky. There's a bunch of them now, but that's like a credit base. So when a patient walks in and they're applying for credit, a third-party creditor, it's like a credit card, so to speak. That's one option, right? The second option will be in-house financing. Now, most offices do in-house financing, but they do it all wrong. They do it at their own risk, and they often only offer like 3 months financing. So, by the way, if someone can't afford it, it's nice to spread something over 3 months, but I guess the way I would look at it is if you could spread that over 12 months, make the payment even smaller, you'd get even better result. And even better, if you could get a company to guarantee that risk. So if someone said yes, that and they failed to pay, if there was a company to come in and reimburse you the difference, why wouldn't you do it? And that's a company called Verity that I'm a big fan of. So in-house financing doesn't have to be as risky as probably you're doing it now. There's companies that can guarantee the difference if anybody ever defaults. And it's usually, 100%. So you'll get approvals every time. The last pillar, so to speak, is membership or wellness plans. And this is more about preventative. So, your hygiene appointment, your perio, your fluoride, your x-rays, people that don't have dental insurance, especially the millennials or zennials, they like payment plans. That's why iPhones, you walk into a cell phone store and iPhones, they've broken it down to 2-year contracts because no one has $600 to slap down. And if they did, they would probably still choose the payment option. The statistics are there. So why wouldn't you do that? It makes you more sticky with that patient if you've got them on a payment plan with their preventative, and they're probably going to come in every 6 months because they're paying. And every time they come in, it's another opportunity for you to look in their mouth and see if they have any restorative. So big picture, I would like you to have these 3 pillars, and that way you can, offer this to your patients. Now, that's a big asterisk to this whole slide. You can have all of these options in your office, but if you're actually not offering them, who cares? We all know that the Care Credit brochure, little stand has dust all over it. I see it all the time. And it's because nobody talks about it. And then the front office person's always saying, well, everybody gets declined and I'm afraid of doing it. Well, maybe that's because you only pull that brochure out to the one patient that asks for it. And by the way, they're the ones that have the most credit issues because they're the ones asking for it. But if you actually offered it to literally 100% of your patients, they would choose these options and you would get them approved more and you would sell more dentistry. It's a fact. So again, implementing some of this it will get you maximum gains. Next slide, Kevin. I think scheduling is my last piece. Scheduling is so important right now because, again, that coveted spot that we haven't had for the last 2.5 months. And so you're going to bring your entire team in, and you hopefully got the PPP loan. We want to maximize that opportunity as much as possible. So my big thing right now is get ahead of the cancellations. And I have to say, I'm so sorry for your front office managers right now. You should be bonusing them or giving them candy or Starbucks cards or whatever it takes to make them happy right now, because they have the worst job in the world right now because their schedules are a train wreck. They're calling, they're confirming. Not only are they confirming, but they're asking 100 pre-screening questions. I mean, it's difficult right now. And people aren't calling them back because they're scared about COVID. So then they got to cancel. So big picture, get ahead of this. I like for all of my front office people to call 2 to 3 days ahead of time. Call them. If you don't hear from them, you have to cancel that appointment yourself. Take control of your schedule. You probably have a VIP list as long as Santa's list right now. And if someone's not getting back to you and saying, hey, I'm, I can't come in, or if they're just not even confirming, call them back and say, hey, sorry, we haven't heard from you. We're gonna go ahead and cancel your appointment. Call us back. Our chair time is super important right now, but we do want to hear from you. I'm sorry, but we got to take care of all of our patients that are getting back to us. So, and then get on that horn and fill it. And so I guess what I would just say is be quick to cancel. Call the most reliable patients, get them back on the schedule. Of course, there's a strategy there. The highest treatment needs, you might want to identify them. Limit your office risks. I can't stress this enough. Pre-screen, because if you don't, and someone comes into your office and says, does their hygiene, and they leave and they call you and say, oh, by the way, I had COVID last week. Guess what you got to do? You got to shut down now. So that's a problem. So pre-screen and be aggressive with it. And that's really it. So I guess big picture is just control the schedule, be cognizant of the time that you have with your patients in the chair. I think that's the last slide, right, Kevin? I want to make sure. Is there another slide? I think that's it. Okay, good. Yeah, just be super cognizant of your chair time and just own your business. That's the big picture. Own your business. Just because your revenues are down doesn't mean your bottom line has to be down. And I'll just echo what Rod, Kevin, and Mike said, and that's that we're here. And we would help you guys out if you needed us. It's our time to give back. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks again for having me on today.
Michael, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And again, listen to a lot of what he says. It makes a lot of sense. I was in the patient financing world for 30 plus years. And one of the things that, Michael, you hit it right on the nose, is take advantage of some of the options that you have in your office. Don't let those patients get out of the door, because you do have, you know, other options besides you being the bank. So, Michael, thanks for your time. Thanks again for giving us a lot of food for thought.
No problem.
While you're still here, we're going to move to kind of some additional questions that have come up right now. Michael, while you're still fresh, a question came up that says, how do I know how profitable I am and what's a good number?
Yeah. Well, you know, profitability is a funny thing. If you ask your CPA, they'll tell you something. I'm going to pick on Rod and Kevin. If you ask a practice broker, it might be something else. If you talk to a banker, it might be something else. So profitability is a funny thing, but it really does come down to a few key numbers. Of course, your bottom line is your profit, and you've got, you know, your owner's compensation. You've got your amortization, your depreciation. You know, those are the big things, your interest expense. But, you know, that's kind of a complicated, more big picture question. You would have to send your profit and loss or your P&L over to one of the experts here. We'd love to break that down and show you. But, you know, get in the habit of pulling your profit and loss. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of profit and losses that are just crazy. Like the CPAs are just, they have a ton of chart of accounts that don't even make sense. So that might be the first place to go, is if you can't read your own P&L and it's too complicated, work with your bookkeeper, work with your accountant, work with a consultant like myself to get that cleaned up so that you can actually read it. And then once you can read it, then track it. And again, I offered that profit tracker tool. I'm happy to provide that, but it really is a simple exercise. But I think CPAs and all of the professionals industry kind of make it a little too complicated. So I don't know if I answered the question, but you know, work with your CPA, your bookkeeper, and your potentially your consultant to help you work that out.
All right, thank you. Mike, a question came in for you. How soon before opening is too early for a dental startup practice to start guerrilla marketing to get name out in the community, even if 3 months or longer out from opening? So I think you're asking how soon could they do marketing prior to opening up a dental startup?
If someone came to me and they said they wanted to open or they wanted to do 3 months before, I might cry with tears of joy, because usually we get them like, hey, I'm opening my practice in next week. What can we do here to get some patients going in? The answer to that is 3 months, a year. If you told me that you were going to open up a practice in a year, you had to play, and this happens in a lot of parts of the country where it's hard to get permitting and all that kind of stuff, and you're 100%, you know you're going to open up a practice, you know this is where you're going to do, where you want to be. You told me you had a year, I would work with you and we'd come up with a great plan. I mean, what a great time. If you think about this for a second, what a great time. Even if it was a year before, you could start getting involved in all parts of your community. You could still sponsor events. You could put on healthcare mini seminars or webinars. You could go out and meet all your neighbors, as far as your local pediatricians and other doctors and family care doctors, and put together events and do things that you can't do once you get full time in your practice. And we would love to have practices do things like that. But before you start your practice, usually you have a little more time, or you're willing to make more time. Maybe you still have a full-time job and you don't have a lot of time. But the chances are, when you're first starting your practice, you have that excitement, you have more energy, you're not sleeping at night. We'll figure ways to create some awesome ways to get your information out there before you're even open. Mike, when Ingrid sits with a client or I sit with a client, our goal, in a perfect world, we want you to be booked the day you open. We want you to be fully booked. We want you to be already having to open up another operatory, calling Mike Dinzio and say, help me, buddy. I don't know what to do with all this business. And then call the supply company. And then you're calling Rod and Kevin and saying, hey, I need another practice. I need some portable image. Already got me booked out for 6 months. I love what I do.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to piggyback off that. I do a lot of startup coaching. And in fact, I saw one of my clients. I hope he was the one that asked that question to you, Mike. He's doing a startup right now. And I could echo that. If I could, I would echo that louder. The sooner, the better. And on top of that, if you're going to do those community events, ask for the business. That's one thing that I feel like the sooner that you do marketing, the better. But then if you're going to do some of those community events, like have that iPad and say, hey, can I'd love to schedule you in 6 months. When's your hygiene? Or even if you can't take appointments, you're really early on, just get them to follow you on social media so you can continue to engage. I mean, there are so many things that folks do, and you're right, Mike. They wait to the last minute, and then there's nothing you can almost do to fill them up.
No, it can take 2 to 3 months to get people really going anyway. So yeah, no, the longer time you have, the better. There's so much that you can do, and there's ways you can be involved. And I mean, I think a lot of times our doctors get embarrassed, maybe is a word, or just aren't comfortable. Ultimately, that's our job, Mike Dinzio's job, my job, to really help through that situation. And yeah, definitely market. And it goes back to, what is marketing? Marketing doesn't mean putting an ad on a billboard. It doesn't mean you're going to have a commercial on TV or anything like that. What it means is the messaging, like I talked about before, just getting the message out, let people know what you're doing, talk about the practice, talk about your vision, talk about health and oral health. There's so many things that you can be doing out there to get your name out there and start building. I love that idea with the iPad, to start building up a list of potential patients ready to schedule when you're able to schedule for whatever reason. Maybe you don't have your license quite ready yet, or what have you, your business license, and you're not comfortable. There's no reason you can't start not only getting your Facebook followers, but you can also be literally building a database of patients to be calling. Like what we would do, we'd create a landing page for your website, and we would have information about you. We'd have a perfect way of a video of you talking about your vision and why you want to open your practice. And then we'd have a place for the people to be able to put in there, yes, I'm interested, call me, let me know when you start scheduling, and we can start building an actual database of people. The problem is it really doesn't happen. Honestly, most startups, they don't even start thinking about marketing until towards the time they're ready to open. So yeah, there is no too soon. No too soon.
All right. Thank you. All right. I got 2 of them for Rod. So the first one, Rod, if retiring in the next 12 to 18 months, how do you position the practice for sale?
Well, we have a checklist, and as I said before, cash flow and profitability are the main things in a practice. So you need to take a close look, as Mike said, at your financials, your profit and loss statement, and your practice management reports. And I think Mike offers an analysis of that. He can help you with that, and so can we, to see, 1, how profitable you are, 2, if your ratios line up with the industry averages, 3, your procedure mix and those types of things in the practice, your staff and all those different things. So the most critical thing is getting all the numbers to look good. The second thing that's not quite as critical but important as well is to take a look at your practice itself. Are you digital? Do you have a paper record still? Are you paperless? Has your practice not had new carpet since 1972 and it's green shag, that type of stuff. So take a look at those types of things and improve all that, and that'll make your practice much easier to sell.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. Second one for Rod. What if I don't return to my practice and want to sell ASAP? Does that impact the price/value of my practice?
Well, one, I wouldn't recommend it to not return to your practice. I've got a couple doctors right now that are selling their practice and they don't want to go back into the practice. And I equate it to, you know, we sell practices on occasion where the doctor passed away and the practice is virtually closed and we're working with the spouse to sell the practice. A rule of thumb is that you lose about 10% of the value per week for every week that there's no doctor in the practice. So if you don't return and you know, everyone else is returned, you're going to lose value probably every week. And as far as getting it sold ASAP, it's going to be hard to sell ASAP if it's closed. Caveat is that if it's in downtown Portland, Bellevue, Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, Phoenix, really nice location, great practice, we could probably find a buyer fairly quickly, as long as it's a really nice practice and in a good location. Keep in mind that bank financing and closing takes 6 to 8 weeks and occasionally longer. So they'll probably ask for a discount for there. So what we've done on one occasion is we had owner financing, just have the buyer take over the practice right away and work in the practice for 6 months and then try to get it refinanced after 6 months. So yeah, it does impact the value. It's not the best situation to be in.
Okay, we've got a few more and we still have time. So open this up to the group. Any thoughts of ability to refi my practice loan at this time?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Banks will typically want to see your production numbers for the first probably month or two to see where you are. You know, and if you've been open since mid-May or so, you might be in a position where your production is up to 85 to 100% of what it was before. And if that's the case, you can probably get your loan refinanced. Rates are really good right now, so there are a couple banks that would be willing to do that. So Mike, being an ex-banker, might have an opinion on that too. So
Recovering banker.
Recovering banker, that's it.
I would expect banks to look at production right out of the gate post COVID. But as long as everything looked like it was rebounding, like that, again, opportunity in crisis, now's the time. But just in general, I think Rod said it really well. Like banks are a little sensitive right now to the environment. But my gut feeling after talking to most of them, ex-friends, or not ex-friends, but ex-banks, friends in the industry, I would expect in the next 60 days things to be a little bit more normal than what they are today. So, but take advantage of the rates for sure.
Okay. We'll start with this one. This is kind of anonymous, but let's see. Are buyers excited about buying right now?
That's a good question. Rod, I can take it and you could follow it up. I've got about 22 buyers right now actively looking for practices. I would say, you know, more than half of them are more excited about buying than ever because of the way they were treated during COVID, how the owners of their current offices have laid them off and have not brought them back, or maybe they asked them to do hygiene because the hygienist didn't come back, and so they're doing 30% of hygiene right now. So I think for the younger docs, which are mainly buyers, I think they're ready to go. of course, I've got 20% of those buyers that are just scared to death and putting off buying till next year. And then you've got like the middle group, of course, that is just looking for that unicorn practice, which doesn't exist. So big picture, like overall, I would say I'm pretty optimistic about the market as a whole, with buyers and kind of the way they're reacting. And I'm really interested in what Rod says about sellers. I'm under the impression from what I've heard that there's a lot of practices going on the market soon because doctors don't want to be in the game anymore. So kind of a unique situation in the market right now.
Yeah, I would agree, Mike, that buyers for the most part are pretty excited. Especially a lot of seem to be getting more and more buyers who are wanting their second, third, fourth locations, and those guys have experience. They know the ropes, and they know what they're getting themselves into. So they're pretty confident in what they're doing, and they are excited about buying. The ones that don't are typically those first-time buyers who they don't know how to read a profit and loss statement. They don't know how to do a practice management report. They can seed a crown, and they can do fillings and those types of things, but they don't know anything about the business. So those guys are a little bit nervous, but that was even happening before COVID. So I wouldn't say that that's changed a whole lot. But I think buyers are, like I said before, buyers are coming back, and they're pretty excited about getting into a practice and not having to be an associate with the fate of their employment depending on somebody else.
All right, we got two more that one is to the group is, what do you recommend for associate or associates trying to move into ownership?
Just big picture. Can you repeat that, Kevin? What do you think the spirit of that is?
What do you recommend for associates trying to move into ownership? So it's looking, there's associates out there looking to want to be an owner now. What would you recommend and how to do it?
Well, my first step is really, identify the type of practice that you are looking to buy or start, for that matter. What your vision is, what the area that you want to practice in, what your demographics that you want to serve, what kind of vision you have for your personal self. And then from there, I'll speak to the majority that they typically want to buy a practice. And so your next step would be to talk to a Rod and a Kevin and really see what's on the market. My biggest advice to those associates that are looking to buy is get to know your practice brokers, like the Omni group. Get to know them intimately, like call them regularly. They are doing evaluations as we speak that aren't on the market. You might get an opportunity to slide into something without it even hitting the market. So know all the brokers, know all the practices, scour the listings on their website, and if you still can't find something, then you might want to take a serious look at doing a startup and teaming up with Affordable Image and getting a great marketing strategy going and create your own. But big picture, I am so pro ownership. I want these associates to take their careers into their own hands, earn their own keep, quit being dependent on corporate dentistry. It's still a phenomenal industry. Like you said, Rod, in your presentation, people still need their teeth cleaned. I mean, I don't see that going away. So
I just want to touch really quick on the marketing side. Thinking about corporate dentistry, we got a lot of associates that we ran across and asking us, kind of scared to try to compete against the corporate dentistry. And what we tell them is you actually have an advantage, and you should utilize that advantage. The fact that you're not a corporate dentist is huge. Now the market doesn't know it and doesn't understand it, and that's where marketing and messaging comes in, explaining why you are who you are and why you care, and that you are the owner and that you're going to be here for the next 25 years versus whoever's over at next, the street down. They might only be there for the next 6 months. There's just many ways to be able to talk about it and explain and show why you're as an owner of a practice versus a corporate dentistry situation. I'll compete. I love that. Give me a dentist that's competing against an Aspen or a Western, any of them, Pacific. Let's do this, and we'll beat them every time. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I'll add to that, Mike, just to, I threw a graphic up about expenses and what you should really target. Mike was probably cursing me in the background on mute when he saw the marketing spend. I knew it. You wrote it down. So I'll make a comment. If you're in growth mode, I would like you to be closer to 4 to 5%, quite frankly. If you're, just because that's the average doesn't mean that's the right amount of spend. I don't see my practices spending enough on marketing, and that's not because I'm buddies with Mike. I will tell any doctor they need to be spending more on marketing, and if you're looking just to maintain life as is, my target for you is 3% of collections. And if you're in growth mode, I've seen as much as 6 to 8%. So if you're at 1%, which is the average, I'm a little concerned about you. So,
well, thank you for that. And also, real quick on that, I will add is it's the percentage of where you want to go. I mean, if you're doing $100,000 a month and you want to be $1 million practice in the next year, you got to spend 6% of that. You need to go find some place to borrow some money and have a plan together to get those kind of numbers. So it's, where are you and where do you want to be? 1% or 6% of 100,000 is not going to get you anywhere very, very fast. Where if you want to be that much further ahead, if you just want to grow a little bit, if you want to just add another $20,000 a month, you rather, or 5,000, or the numbers work out to be, then that makes sense. So there's all, as with anything that we always talk about, there's so many variables.
there are like picking up the phone correctly once they call.
Answering the phone. Let's start there. We have a lot of practices that don't even answer. They'll spend $5,000 on a marketing campaign and they're not even answering their telephones. And then they're mad that the marketing's not working. And we're like, wait, call tracking on here. We know how many calls are being answered. You got to answer your phones. Let's start there. Just answer them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And again, Ingrid is always the one that you'll want to talk to at AI. Mike, you've got one heck of a person there, and I wish she was here tonight. We'll get her on in the next round, but love her to death, and the things that she does for the clients out there. She does a great job.
Thank you.
So with that, I think the last question, Rod, I think you already answered here. It was, how do you value practices now? I think you answered that in the presentation, and right now is that they're still being valued through through the same way they were through 2019. Anything to add to that, Rod, to his valuation?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. We haven't changed anything. We're plugging away and valuing as of the end of 2019 at the moment, and then as we progress through 2020, we'll start making some adjustments, but we'll still keep valuing the way we always have been.
Well, panel, thank you very much for your time tonight. We're going to just run quickly. There'll be an email coming out to all of our sign up people that registered. Each one of the speakers has graciously offered a free incentive offering from their company. So look for it in the mail. You'll see it from Omni, free snapshot practice valuation. You'll see from AI marketing, from Mike and Ingrid, get your marketing analysis, free marketing analysis. And they'll also, from Next Level, from Michael, the free practice analysis, and I think he talked about the free profit tracking tool. So there'll be a number of different offers from each one of the speakers tonight. Take advantage of those. From all of us at Omni, we thank you very much for allowing us to be part of your night. And again, Rod, thank you for allowing us to have this.
Oh, you bet.
And we'll continue to work towards another webinar next Thursday. We'll have another webinar. Check omni-pg.com for the next webinar that we'll be putting on. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Again, thank you, panelists, for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. And again, your advice is well taken and should be taken by all the dentists out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, for moderating.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Omni.
Thanks, everybody.
You guys take care. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You too. Have a good night.